Hi everybody and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my good friend and co-host Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you, Mal?
I'm really, really good. I'm hoping that my microphone is going to hold up this week after its little bit fit last week's. Hopefully everybody is hearing me loud and clear, and indeed Matt as well, obviously. But we have much to talk about this week on the Property AI Report, so we're going to kick off as ever with our property news. All right, this week was some kind of nerve-jangling moments for Rightmove. It was on the threshold of being booted out of the FTSE 100, and there was a lot of analysis, a lot of sort of focus on how it was going to do. In the end, it turned out that by a whisker, it has managed to stay in the FTSE 100. Essentially, the calculations by the FTSE officials are they leave a kind of 10% buffer of 110 companies in the FTSE 100, so that they don't kind of have to keep bouncing up and down. So it's really interesting to sort of contrast what happened with EasyJet, which after the Iran or the US and Israel versus Iran war started, has seen their shares plummet even further. So that has dropped out of the FTSE, whereas Rightmove managed to cling on because they released their financial reports for last year, 2025. Revenue was up nearly 10%. Profits were up similarly, and they announced they were going to get even more from mortgages and charge agents another 120 quid per branch per month this year. So that bounced the shares up enough to convince the FTSE officials that they would take a kind of watching brief over the next 3 months and review again at the end of the next quarter. Matt, you've been having a little look at this story as well. What's your take?
I'm intrigued to know if it's just a tit-for-tat response in the way that we have with the large language models, where one releases a new model and the other one immediately comes back with something even better. Is it a tit-for-tat response to you saying they're going to drop out, and it's like an anti-Mal attempt there? It's now we're going to stay in the top 100 just to spite Mal and make him put a LinkedIn post out there about the topic.
Yeah, listen, so I would love to believe that that the guys at Rightmove spend a lot of time looking at what we're doing over here and reading my LinkedIn posts. But look, when Rightmove was at its pomp about 6-7 months ago, something like that. Obviously, the idea that they would fall out of the FTSE 100 was absolutely, just ridiculous. The fact that they came this close obviously is interesting. They actually managed to regain about 200 million of the 300 million that they needed over the first couple of days this week in order to stave off that relegation. You can see EasyJet having fallen out, that it's absolutely possible. I think EasyJet went out at about 3.12 or something billion. That was when they dropped out. Rightmove was 3.15 last week. So yeah, I think it's a lot to do with direction of travel, and I do think that the fact that they managed to get this sort of bounce right at the end of last week with their 2025 figures has basically kept them in for the next 3 months.
So almost as the layperson and being an Everton fan, is this like when we brought in Sean Dyche to stave off relegation? Have they sort of pulled a rabbit out of the hat, but you're saying 3 months from now they're going to be back in the mire?
Yeah, the call went out to Big Sam to basically kind of come along and try and save them from it. But yeah, look, I mean, the share prices of these organisations are volatile, as you can see from the fact that Rightmove is now worth pretty much half of what it was 7 months ago. But yes, those fine margins. Yes, it's a point. It's a goal difference way of kind of staying up for these 3 months, and we'll see what happens in 3 months' time for sure.
Well, there's been some other interesting reports this week, hasn't there, come out? And Foxtons announced that their revenue's up 5% on 2025. Profits flat, so the 5%'s up to 172.5 million. And a couple of people sort of said, well, hold on, why is profit flat? That's not a great market. And when I say a lot of people, I was at the Women in the Estate Agency, not a conference, yesterday. Sorry, I had to catch myself there for the not bit. The people say, well, hold on, why is it flat? But not everyone's necessarily picked up on the fact that Foxtons acquired the company up in Birmingham, acquired, was it Imagine Homes as well? There's been a lot of, obviously, yes, there's been, and I don't know if Haslam's last year fell into last year or not, but there's been a lot of acquisition, which obviously comes with cost. So I think the revenue's an interesting market for them at the moment.
Yeah, and their share price is on the way up, right? So they got a decent bounce as a result of their results and the strategic direction that they're going in. And I think it is interesting to kind of actually compare and contrast. What you've got is Foxtons, which is almost doubling down on being Foxtons. This is what we've always done. We have, and again, The management team there have done an amazing job of kind of re-establishing their identity, and actually getting them back into the kind of swing of being, the kind of aggressive, really kind of sharp suited sort of estate agents that they always have been. And it's working, and now they're expanding, nationally, going out, as you say, into sort of Birmingham and other areas, and that's their strategic plan. So yeah, the market obviously is very keen and excited on a company that knows, its DNA and is very kind of focused on what it's doing. And I think it does contrast quite interestingly with Rightmove in terms of, Rightmove's kind of gone a little bit down this AI route, but quite dipped its toe in the water and not quite committed. And the market is quite nervous of that, because then it kind of feels like, well, they're not doing that kind of completely, but they're doing this a bit, and it's all just a little bit kind of confusing for them. So yeah, I think the city likes kind of certainty. I think that on all online marketplaces, and again, you look at Auto Trader, you look at all the other ones across the world, they are also struggling because this AI wave is kind of coming and hitting them, and it just feels like they're kind of not really set on one particular thing. They're trying to just kind of keep the ship afloat whilst all these other kind of storms are raging around them. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting and really valuable kind of contrast between those two.
It echoes well too with the sort of feedback that we got from one of the listeners on the podcast last week, that the conversation we had around first party data really resonated, and obviously Foxtons, Surgeon and the other controllers of that first party data are the ones that are getting the benefits of it, and sort of, as you say, the right moves, who were the aggregators in the past, who are actually sort of being hit by this AI coming wave, as you say. So
I think certainly the ones that charge, for sure, absolutely. If you are being discovered for free via AI, then I think that, that there is a really huge risk to the paid for portals that will charge you for the privilege of surfacing your data if that data is already being surfaced.
Yeah.
So yeah, listen, that is about the Rightmove and Foxtons and so on. We've got some more kind of city business news around Taylor Wimpy. So they have launched a £52 million share buyback as their profits have fallen sharply. It's really interesting around the developers right now, isn't it? Because the government has been trying to push them into doing this 1.5 million new homes over 5 years, which is, and actually the number has been falling, during the life of this particular parliament. I think it's in the hundreds of thousands rather than 300,000 that they need per year. Do you have any kind of take on what's been happening with house builders and why they're just not putting the spades in the ground and getting the properties up?
Not hugely, but I did see an interesting stat from Chris Stato-Watkin in relation to the homes being built over we went back sort of 100 years, and there has been, as we all know, a gradual decline in the number of houses being built, right? And so I'm just intrigued to know why Taylor and Wimpy are launching this buyback now, and see where they take that.
Yeah, so any share buybacks tend to be all to shore up share prices, basically, because there is, if you remove the volume of shares from the market, then it naturally kind of boosts the actual price of the remaining shares individually. So it can be a tactic just to kind of shore up a share price plunge. And Rightmove itself announced a £90 million share buyback last Friday as part of their attempts to stave off relegation from the FTSE. So yeah, I think it is a tactic that is deployed to try and protect businesses from some bad PR. But yeah, it strikes me as something odd that these house builders must be getting quite a lot of incentive from the government to try and shore up their numbers with 1.5 million properties to be built, but yet they're just not creating them. So something that we'll keep an eye on as we go through, particularly the rest of this year, just to see if actually, as the economy hopefully was about to pick up, obviously until the war in the Middle East started a couple of weeks back, and there was an expectation that this would actually boost the property market as well, but we'll see how true that is as the world changes around us again. All right. Also in our property news, Jitty, one of the AI property portals, they've got a very cool search functionality on there. They've added some new green homes property search filter, haven't they, to their site?
And it's an interesting one, this, because it's the whole point of Jitty originally was that you don't have filters, right? You just query in natural language. So having this, I guess you still need people to have guides, and even in chatbots you have the suggested sort of queries, don't you? But it's something that more and more people we know have been looking, especially that electric vehicle charging points is something that people are definitely on the hunt for, aren't they? Even this morning as I was running around Brixton, there's EVs plugged in everywhere. There's one that was whirring quite worryingly, sort of. I don't know if they can overheat or not, but it certainly helped me pace away from that. But it's good to see, right? And it's something that obviously Jitty was one of the earliest to come out with their natural language search, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, listen, Graham, the guys out there doing more for helping people to discover properties in a different way, which I think is great. All for that. And yeah, like you say, that it is it is increasingly of interest to people moving as petrol and diesel are being phased out, although the phasing out has obviously been kicked a little bit further into the longer grass. But yes, I'm sure as natural language search becomes even more of a thing, then there's going to be a lot more that comes out from all of these sites around being able to just talk about your lifestyle when you're looking for property, for sure. All right, that is our property news for this week. Let's dive into our AI and tech news. Right, so there's only one really big tech. I say there's only one. There is an enormous tech AI news piece that came out from the States over the last few days. It is slightly complex. It's to do with Anthropic being banned by the Pentagon and OpenAI, ChatGPT, stepping in to fulfill a contract with the US military. Matt, how are you for a very quick summary of what's been going on? Because it is
I get the Rory role. This is brilliant. For anyone who listens to The Rest is Politics, I get to do that. You didn't. This is going to be. Kate listens to Rory, and she loves the fact he always says issues, and but also his summaries of all the past conflicts. So,
go on then. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. All the news articles I put in there is going to help me through this. So the Department of War, as America now call it, I can't remember what it was called before that, but something less aggressive
with an S.
Yeah, they use Anthropic and had a contract and used Anthropic's AI for a number of things, obviously not revealing exactly what it was. But Anthropic who are the makers of Claude. There's a number of people I chatted to yesterday who are using Claude Code, and Claude Cowork. And Anthropic sort of put their foot down to say there's a red line in our terms that you cannot use AI for unethical reasons, and there was some things that the Department of War were looking to do in terms of monitoring civilians in their own country and processing data over targets, which, given what happened a week or so back, just definitely looks towards Anthropic's AI was used as part of that and helping establish targets. And Anthropic were trying to put the foot down. Trump took umbrage to this and said, if you don't change your mind by 5:01 on Friday, we're going to cut you. And then that afternoon, Trump went off on his Truth Social to say, right, that's it. Anthropic are out, and not just out of the Department of War directly, but everywhere in our supply chain needs to remove Anthropic's Claude from it. So that caused all kinds of, obviously, concerns. There was people all over the world jumping off. Not jumping off, but then there's all AI people sort of saying, well, we don't want to be involved in this. And then into the breach, because obviously Department of War has now said there's no Anthropic. Well, who they're going to use? Into the breach stepped Sam Altman and OpenAI, taking on a contract with the Department of War to supply the AI exactly like they needed it. So there's a little bit of a rebellion, a backlash with people leaving ChatGPT and taking on Claude in its place. AI employees from Google, OpenAI, everywhere being unified on this front. And off the back of that, Claude saw a massive leap to number one in the App Store as the go-to chatbot of choice. So much so that on Monday, and I thought this was something I'd done wrong over the weekend, on Monday Claude was down because of the sheer volume of people utilising it. So at 6 a.m. on Monday, when I was trying to pull something together for a report, I thought I'd broken it, but it turned out it was the world was down. So continuing on from that, we now see Sam Altman and OpenAI scrambling to try change the terms of their relationship with the Pentagon because there's been such a backlash about how if this AI is being used. So it's been an interesting week, and obviously we don't do politics on it.
Exactly right. But yeah, exactly right. That's a really good summary. Yeah, the real key kind of issues for Anthropic and for Claude were basically autonomous killing. Basically, so can they use the AI to just kill people, but for it to make decisions about killing people? And Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei said it's not ready to do that. And the Pentagon said, we'll be the judge of that. We're going to use it. And they went, no, you're not. And then also, as you say, the kind of surveillance of US citizens. So those were the two kind of sticking points that Anthropic said, no, you can't use it for this, which Sam Altman and ChatGPT, OpenAI's ChatGPT, said, oh, no, that's actually fine. And they got a lot of kickback, as you say. A lot of people saying they're going to get rid of ChatGPT. A lot of staff at OpenAI, kind of openly saying that they are very uncomfortable with what's happening. And I imagine it's going to be a great sort of recruiting sergeant for Anthropic as well, where some of the top talent will start to shift across as well. But Anthropic's always kind of had this more sort of ethical standpoint. It was actually founded by a couple of ChatGPT, OpenAI's kind of co-founders who walked away from ChatGPT because they felt that it wasn't being safe enough. So yeah, it's always had that in its DNA. This obviously has been a big moment, but it is interesting as well to kind of see the other side, right? So actually, Anthropic is kind of saying that that the US government can't use it in a certain way. As a private company, there's no, they're not voted for. It is Trump and his Republican Party that are in power. So should they be able to actually use the technology in any way that they see fit, or should this, CEO of a technology company be allowed to kind of basically rein them in? But out of all of this, what's happened is that Anthropic, as you say, is now designated a major security risk, which is more than some of the Chinese AIs are actually considered and rated as.
The last time this happened was there's a term for it, isn't there, when he says get it out of the supply chain? But the last time that happened was with Huawei in terms of their technology, and that's obviously a non-US company, whereas this is an actual US company. And they're saying that basically that the American government is just trying to, what is it, corporate murder, industrial murder, just like they know that every company has to do it. And the number of companies, I was listening to a thing this morning where the number of companies who are actually already making that move to pull Anthropic is incredible.
Yeah, it's a really sort of existential at this point. So yes, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. It also does speak a little bit to OpenAI's kind of desperation, I guess, for more money. We've touched on over the last few weeks that it kind of stands alone as being, the one that doesn't really have as much revenue. It claimed, and again, you put in the show notes, that it's got 25 billion in annualized revenue right after Anthropic. Claude had said that it had got 20 billion in annual revenue. So, there's this, it is, and it's constantly like, just kind of sniping at each other from the sidelines. But obviously, with so many people, or so many people within the US kind of supply chain having to dissociate themselves from Anthropic, that is going to hit their bottom line quite significantly. And, just a lot of companies are just going to steer clear. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Indeed. And on that as well, so I didn't manage to get it in the show notes, but OpenAI have just raised another 130 billion as well. So it's been an interesting week on the financial front.
Yeah, and 110 billion, just for kind of context, the biggest previous IPO. All right, so this isn't even private investment. The biggest ever kind of, release of or injection of funds raised was 27 billion, which was Aramco Oil or something back in 2019. So 27 billion, and basically Sam Altman has been able to raise sort of 4 times that on the private markets. So there's still, obviously a lot of belief. There is a suggestion, a lot of people starting to talk about, is it too big to fail now, OpenAI? Actually, it's kind of, there are so many people who've invested so much money in it that actually, if it does kind of teeter on the brink, or if anything does happen to it, then it's going to take a big chunk of the US economy, confidence, market with it. Yes. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out, particularly as you say that they've got this big, massive investment. But if they need that now, what are they going to need in another sort of 6 months to a year? And who's got it? How much money is there in the private markets left? All right. So that's about Anthropic and its situation this week. Some other news in the AI and tech space. There continues to be a lot of talk about OpenClaw and about these autonomous AI agents. You've been playing around with quite a lot of these, right?
I've not actually built. So this is going back a step. It's the open clarification is what we discussed last week about not just OpenClaw and the sort of AI agents that are autonomous, but also how everyone else is starting to introduce functionality to try close that gap. So Claude Code introduced remote work, so you could still continue interacting and instructing. This week we've seen Microsoft Copilot have launched tasks. So a very similar sort of glorification, although that's only available in America at the moment. So we're looking forward to when Copilot tasks hits over here, as often seems to be the case. But this step that I think is quite interesting this week is the number of companies who are either opening up as almost I call it an app market for OpenClaw. So having agents that you can add into your company just straight off the bat. So go in and get yourself a CFO or a coach or an executive assistant, but also the number of companies who are there to build what they're calling, one company's actually called itself Zero Human Company. And it actually, you can go in there and either say, this is my idea for a business. I want you to help me spin up a team of agents to work as my employees. Or even if you haven't got an idea, you can go in and say, help me start a business. And they'll come up with an idea and then build the agents around it to go through it. So it's interesting to see that idea that you can maybe start slow and build your MacBook Mini or your MacBook Neo, as you put in the show notes. But actually then there's these businesses that are very much there to add and help you bolster your agents or your agentic when you're looking. So you don't have to build them from scratch yourself.
Yeah, I do think it's really interesting that the more that this kind of stuff is automated, obviously that there's a big sort of push within the accelerationists to kind of go, right, yes, everybody, let's go and do this really, really fast. As you know, I've been out on the tour of the country, and it's only a small percentage of people who are actually using this. So, if you are listening to this and you're kind of thinking, my God, everybody's doing this now and it's all coming way too fast and I'm being left behind, you're not. There's still a lot of stuff that's between here and zero humans, and I do think what we're talking about here speaks to what I think is true, which is that the tech itself is not the moat around your business, all right? In the world of AI, because the tech AI can build anything. You were just talking about, you don't even have to have an idea now. You can just ask AI for an idea and then get it to build it and then kind of get it to roll it out. That is. If it's that easy, then everybody's going to be doing it, right, in due course. What is going to be the moat around your business is first of all, relationships, so actually human to human relationships. How do you get out, speak to your people, your customers? How do you bring more leads in, all that sort of stuff? By building relationships with them. And then secondarily, proprietary data. So data that you've got that nobody else has got. And those two things really are kind of the things to really work hardest on in this world of AI and in this world of kind of what seems to be continuing automation and relentless automation of absolutely everything. I think still we as humans are always going to need to kind of communicate with social creatures. So that I think is going to be where the edge is as we go through. But a lot of admin tasks are going to be just dealt with. So
the repetitive, boring stuff, right? And it's the one that I was listening to is quite interesting to go back to right to start with OpenClaw, which basically you can set up these autonomous agents, you can give them personas, you can give them names, and someone actually had 4 separate OpenClaws running on 5 separate laptops, each with their own aim, each with their own role, and you basically treat them very much like you're onboarding a new employee. So like that one's the one that's going to do my really mind-numbing processing my expenses and adding them to QuickBooks. And I was really pleased when the lady said she used QuickBooks because that's what I use. And it's like, oh, okay, I can understand. So I never do my expenses until it's the end of the quarter, and then you suddenly rush into find everything.
Boring.
Exactly. Yeah. And the fact
I've got a pile of receipts here right now.
If I can straight back at you. Here's mine. But the idea that it's that repetitive, mind-numbing, boring admin that you just don't want to get around to. And I was talking to Peter Lawrence from Lawrence Rand yesterday, and he's tried various bits and pieces, but the idea that you'd be able to actually say, this is the way I work, this is how I want it to deal with mine, because everyone has that slightly different way of working as well. And that's what sets you apart in that's your moats, as you put it, that sets you apart, right? And leaves you to do the things which is the build relationships and the fun stuff, the engagement, the bringing the sense of community to your business. That's where you really win.
So couldn't agree more. All right, just some news, relatively fresh news about OpenAI ChatGPT latest version. So 5.4 is now, ChatGPT 5.4 is now being spoken of, and OpenAI have released a little teaser on X saying 5.4 is closer than you think. I noticed this week that actually and again, forgive the kind of really kind of detailed nature of this, but 5.3 is where, so they've got 5.3 Codex, the coding one. They've had 5.2 as being the chat and the kind of AI agent and the thinking models. They changed it this week, and I know because part of when I'm going around the country, I actually dig deep into to help people to understand what the difference is between all the models. And they released ChatGPT Instant 5.3, and then they kept thinking of 5.2, and now they're talking about 5.4 is coming soon, and it's just like, just go on with it. Just make it simple. Make it make sense. But yes, so new models coming out from OpenAI, presumably some of them offensive to try and steal a march on others, some of them defensive, waiting in the wings for somebody else to make an announcement and so on. But yes, it continues. The little PR fights continue, and also the development and yeah. The bringing of some really, really, really amazing intelligence. And that's the thing to really remember, is that actually, even if they stopped right now, then the intelligence that is now at our fingertips is game changing. And once we get used to it and understand it and can deploy it in our businesses, even the stuff that's here right now, then it is going to change so much. So yes, it's fascinating to watch, but don't wait for the next one and the next one and the next one, because they're all going to be amazing. And just kind of get on, test it, play with it, see where you get to.
I say 5.3 Instant did away with the waffle, didn't it? That was the main update with it. And so if you ask it a question, it just come back and give you the answer rather than sort of saying, "Oh, that's a really good question, Mal." Yeah, here's the answer.
Perfect. Got it. Yes, right. So that is our AI and tech news this week. Let's move on to our tool of the week. Now, regular listeners will recognize the tool that we're going to talk about here. It is Notebook LM. This is one of Google's amazing AIs. And now we've got cinematic video overviews inside Notebook LM. So, Matt, what can people expect, assuming they are paying the right level of membership with Google Gemini to access this?
I think there's only you have this level at the moment, until obviously your IT team takes you off Google and fully on Microsoft. But so Notebook LM had the ability within the things you could produce to produce videos, but it was a video where basically it was images that transition between each other. Whereas now it takes your content that you ask it to help present and creates a very much, as the sort of title says, a cinematic overview of your content, like we've seen you use when you were launching My Porter, but all generated from the content that you're trying to present on. So taking that next step, which isn't just static images fading between each other and going full video montage, cinema style.
Yeah, amazing. So yes, we will put out a couple of examples up on socials as we build out some more of these. But yes, it's a Notebook LM itself is an amazing piece of kit. Again, if you've not tried it, it's got all sorts of things. It will create podcasts where two people talk about the stuff that you put in. I've been speaking with agents again as we've been going around. What you can do is, if you're going into an area, so say one of your team is going on a viewing and they're not familiar with the property, you can get Notebook LM to create a little podcast about the property and the area, so that when they're driving to it, they can actually hear what the property's like, what the area's like, and all that sort of stuff. So there's some really, really neat uses for that. And that Notebook LM version, that the podcast one is not part of this big super duper pay loads of money on the side. So go and have a play with it. And there's a free level as well, I think. But it is really, really good and really, really helpful for some very, very specific things within our industry. All right, that is all we've got time for this week, Matt. We've tried to keep it under half an hour this week. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Matt, thank you for being there, as ever.
And to yourself, well, thank you for coming along. Thanks, as always.
Always. So listen, we will be back again next week with even more property and AI news. Until then, have yourself some great weeks. We will see you in a few days.
Take care, everyone.